All right, we welcome you. We're hoping that you're having a wonderful night. My name's Cisco Walker, an evangelist here in the International District. I'm here tonight with Pastor Alonso Garcia
Hello.
from New Life Church of God, and we're going to talk about a interesting subject tonight. We're going to talk about heaven. So this is very stereotypical. This is very cliche. Revelation 21 and 21 says this: the 12 gates were 12 pearls. Each individual gate was of one pearl, and the street of the city was pure gold, like transparent glass. So tonight, we're going to take on the difficult subject of heaven. And you might say, well, why is it a difficult subject? But if you really begin to think about it, if you really begin to try to meditate and to try to concentrate and to try to untangle some of the ideas that have been so prevalent for hundreds and hundreds of years, it is, on one hand, something that is very difficult, because heaven is an undeniable component that's found in the pages of Scripture. Heaven is even considered to be so real and important that it is a Christian doctrine to some, in some sense. Heaven is a place, a state of being, or an atmosphere that Christians are taught to pine or to long for. Now, this is interesting. Ironically, heaven is a place that sinners don't want to go. I'm reminded of the song, "Where do bad folks go when they die?" They don't go to heaven where the angels fly. They go to a lake of fire and fry. See him again on the 4th of July. That's your nice fundamentalist keychain for you there. But heaven, that's the meat puppets. But heaven is a place that sinners, they don't really want to go there. Heaven can be, if one is honest, an idea that seems simply too good to be true. It can seem too good to be true for those who do not have Jesus Christ or the Holy Spirit taking up residence in their heart. And to some, it can even be too good to be true for those who are truly and authentically saved. And I think once again, we have to take on the tremendous task of untangling how the church has romanticized the theology of heaven. So thus far, what are your thoughts on heaven tonight?
You know, it's something that I've thought about a lot, and I've written some content on it. Heaven, like, I wasn't raised in church, right? And so, I was born into a Catholic community, and so by extension, I was Catholic, and I didn't need anything, right? So, when I started studying the Bible, and I started hearing people talk about heaven, and I started listening to some of the songs that they sing, and everybody acts like heaven is so far away, and that it's
8 miles up and turn left.
8 miles up and turn left, and third door on the right.
Yeah.
And I think that the church struggles for relevance because heaven is associated with utopia. And it is our opposition, or when I say bipolar, I mean there's two different poles. It's our bipolar thinking that there is heaven and there is hell, and as we
never the two shall meet,
draw from Scripture, right, that there's this great gulf between, and the two shall never meet. And so it then drafts the question, well, where are we in between these two?
Yeah.
Are we in the gulf that will never connect the two? I mean, if we are, well, then they're connected. But it's a fascinating topic, and I really can't wait to get into it.
And what I've seen too is, like, with a lot of evangelicals, with a lot of Christians, is like, heaven is this figurative place.
Yep.
And Jesus is just a byproduct of that. Jesus is just somewhere off over there in the corner, because we're so, our flesh and our ignorance and our pride and our vanity and our need for materialistic things and power, We love streets of gold. We love walls of jasper. We love the dimensions of heaven. We love to romanticize and think about how big it will be, how wonderful it will be. But in the middle of all of that, it's almost like Jesus just gets kind of pushed out of the way to a certain extent. And I think that that we have to become honest with ourselves, thinking that like we actually do that. Because how many people, in your opinion, how many people are just obsessed with a place instead of the presence? How many people are simply obsessed with a destination, but they're not that much concerned about the divinity that will be there constantly?
Well, I think it's a mix. And I think there are some people that are going to they're going to conflate the two. They're going to think that the two are one and the same. Or they're going to at least make the argument that to be in the presence of God is to be in heaven. There are those who are certainly going to look at the concept of heaven, the idea of, hey, I get to be in this place, and the things that they begin to wax poetically about, like, oh, it's going to be this, and we're going to do that, and these things and those things. They've created this entire itinerary for what they're going to do when they get to heaven, because they continue to think that heaven is some sweet by and by. It's not here, it's not present, it's not now, it's not accessible. And then you have the entire polar opposite of people who are so obsessed with heaven that they make withdrawals from the bank of heaven, that they have heard stories of people trips to heaven, and they're like, oh, I saw in this hall there was nothing but arms, and nothing but eyes, and so we speak in the name of Jesus that these eyes would be replaced. And then there are those that focus so much on the presence of God and the holiness of it that they become Pharisees and lose touch with the world around them.
Yeah. Now, let's see. I have here, let's discuss some of Christianity's favorite heretical and old-timey songs about heaven, right? Mansion over the hilltop, I'm satisfied with just a cottage below, a little silver and a little gold. But in that city where the ransomed will shine, I want a gold one that's silver lined, right? I have a mansion over the hilltop in a bright land where I'll never grow old, and someday yonder we will never more wander, but walk on streets that are purest gold. There's our text. This is the second verse. Don't think me poor or deserted or lonely. I'm not discouraged. I'm heaven bound. I'm but a pilgrim in search of the city. I want a mansion, a harp, and a crown, right? So like,
I've never heard that before.
These songs have been sung for over 100 years, right?
Goodness.
Some of these songs have been sung for a very, very long time. So, if you hear this song growing up your whole life, then you're going to think that heaven is a place. And especially Americans, like, we want the mansion, we want the big house. In heaven, I'm going to have a brick home and a Cadillac in the driveway, and the steering wheel is going to be made of gold, and Spot's going to be there, and my, and the cat that died 50 years ago, he's going to be there. But somewhere, Jesus is somewhere in the middle of all this. But I'm not really that concerned about Jesus, because now I have my mansion over the hilltop. It seems as if the Western mindset is so obsessed with materials, it's so bogged down with the flesh, that Jesus is simply a byproduct of this bygone place somewhere way up in the sky, like we were talking about, right? Because when you think of words like that, like the mansion over the hilltop, and then you have I'll fly away, we know these, but these are heretical songs. Some glad morning when this life is over, I'll fly away to a home on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away, right? When the shadows of this life have gone, I'll fly away like a bird from prison bars is flown. I'll fly away. Here we go. Just a few more weary days, and then I'll fly away to a land where joy shall never end. I'll fly away. I see an escape hatch. I see an escape clause. I see that. Would you say these songs are heretical to some degree?
Yeah, I think sometimes maybe for the listener that might be a really hard jump, and so I think
Most don't like it. Yeah.
Well, there's the statement of it, being heretical. But I think we have to address that we have some sacred cows in these pastures of ministry and in this world that we live in. And so I think the challenge with some of those songs, like you described, is that there is an element of materialism, that in so many ways a person is trying to create heaven on earth with the materialistic things they possess, with having that really big TV, or having the newest car, or the newest telephone, or whatever it is, to be the superlative. Like I went to go get eyeglasses today at this place, and they said, well, this grade is are 4 times the grade of standard lenses. I said, well, what's the difference? And the person said, well, it's 4 times the grade. It's 4 times better. I'm like, I understand the number, and I understand what you're trying. I understand the way you're saying it. I don't know what you're talking about. And so I ended up leaving that place, because a person's going to go there because there's a superlative. Well, it's 4 times better. Well, better than what? Better than this place? Better than that place? Like, what's your frame of reference? And so the materialism, we draw the frame of reference from, like you said, I'm going to have this mansion on the hill. It's going to be silver lined. I'm willing to live in a cottage below, but we're not. We make it as silver lined as we can.
Yeah.
And then
because we want utopia now.
We want utopia now, but we could have heaven now, and we just opt for something else.
And people say, when I get to heaven, I'm not going to have any tattoos. When I get to heaven, I'm not going to have any scars. When I get to heaven, I'm not going to be fat. When I get to heaven, I'm not going to be short. When I get to heaven, I'm not going to be ugly. And it's like, well, gee, everything just revolves around you. And why aren't things revolving around Jesus? Because if you're truly and authentically in love with Jesus, you're going to want to be where Jesus is. But we have this Americanized concept of a place called heaven. There was another song that was very, very popular, I Can Only Imagine, right? And I can only imagine a day when I die, or when I go to heaven, or I don't have to hear. I can only imagine ever, ever again. It's like, how many times do you have to record the song, Bart? How many times do you have to record the song, guys? 13 times with an orchestra. It's like, haven't you made enough now already? Haven't you made millions? Do we really have to sit through it again? Do we really have to? I can't wait till the day comes where I won't ever have to hear it again. And then I will shout glory, just like an old-fashioned fundamentalist. But I can only imagine a day when I will never have to hear. I can only imagine ever again.
That's pretty funny.
And some of these songs, this is why it's so important for people who are going to lead worship, or people who are going to be a songwriter. If you're going to write songs about the Bible, you have to have some kind of theological sense. Because if your song catches, and if your song captivates people, and if they sing them over and over and over again, you've got to know what you're talking about. And so, like, these songs have come down the proverbial pike, and they have twisted and they have distorted our concept of this heavenly place. Because I personally feel that without an authentic move of the Spirit, I don't think the natural man, or even the spiritual man to a certain degree, I don't think he can even comprehend what heaven is at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jesus alludes to that in John chapter 3. One of the things that kind of stood out as you were going over some of those song lyrics, and it's one of the frustrations I have with some of the songs that people sing, is that many of the things that we often say, if we're not paying attention to what we say, is we're begging God to do something that he already said he would do, that he already did, that's already been provided for. And so we get lost in the, oh, but God, won't you please, won't you please? And God's like, dude, I already said I would. I already did it. Can we move to the next thing? Like, I have stuff for you to do. It's not about what I can do for you. And so, like that song, I'll Fly Away, in years past when we've sung that song, not you and I, but in groups that I've been part of, I had them change that word to glory days, because I don't have weary days. We got some glory days.
Yeah, well, you're an optimist, and that's fine. But I mean, but yeah, I understand that, and I can only imagine as Mercy Me. I don't like Mercy Me because I don't like Bart Millard's fried green tomato pop version of Calvin's teachings. Like, I don't like it. I don't care for that. And when I was younger, I used to like their music. But like, I don't like that narrow-minded Calvinist thing that they believe in, and like, I don't agree with that. And so that's why I'm so vitriolic about hoping and praying that I don't ever have to hear. I can only imagine. Again, a man can dream, can't he? So, but those things and those songs and those ideas, they shape us and they mold us. And because most Christians, ourselves included, like, we're not going to take the time to research it. We're not going to take the time to think about it. We're not going to take the time to examine it from different angles because we're afraid of what we simply might find. And for me, as I have looked at this and as I have studied this, I went into this with a very pessimistic viewpoint about heaven, and I struggled to believe in it, and I struggled to and I'm not saying that I've come out the other side with this great hope. I haven't had a dream, and I haven't been there, and I haven't I'm not going to write a book about it or anything like that, but I have an inner peace that was not there before, and I have a peace about it because I believe that the Lord told me I don't have to understand it all. I don't have to have a road map, if you will, of the entire scope of whatever heaven is. But there will be peace there, and there will be rest there. And for me, that is enough. It has to be enough. Right?
Yeah.
Now, let's discuss George Orwell's allegorical character, Moses the Raven, and Sugar Candy Mountain, because you'll find, I have found through the years, that Sugar Candy Mountain is not too far off from the Western mindset of most evangelicals have about heaven, right? George Orwell wrote the allegorical, satirical novella entitled Animal Farm. The farm animals rebel against their human master, and they attempt to create a society where the animals can be free and happy. Now, on the manor farm, Moses is a tamed raven who works with Mr. Jones to keep the oppressed workers motivated with tales of the afterlife in Sugar Candy Mountain, located in the sky, right? Sugar Candy Mountain, the quote, in Sugar Candy Mountain, it's Sunday, 7 days a week. Clover was in season year-round, and a lump of sugar and linseed cake grew on the hedges.
Isn't that wonderful?
The oppressed workers, how many people are sitting in churches, how many people are sitting in ministries, and they are oppressed. They are working themselves to death because they don't see themselves as sons, but they see themselves as slaves, right? How many are oppressed, and they're taking, because they have the wrong conception of God, and they say, Master, I knew that you were a hard man, you were an austere man, and you reaped where you have not sown, and so I took what you have given me and I hid it into the ground. But as long as we can keep on telling people that they're going to go to this great place, they're going to have a fishing hole, they're going to have a fishing pole, Spot's going to be there, they're going to have a Cadillac, they're going to have a brick home, they're going to have a gold toilet bowl, they're going to have a platinum toilet seat. As long as we can keep them believing in something like that, we can keep them working for us, we can keep them tithing, we can keep them scrubbing our toilets, we can keep them mopping our floors, we can keep them out there in the streets working themselves to death, because one fine day, right, when this life is over, I'm going to fly away. So Sugar Candy Mountain and a twisted, warped view of the place called heaven, like they're not that far away from each other.
No, no. And we get there because we see Jesus as, like you described, a byproduct or an access point. Like we say, well, Jesus is the only way to heaven. So as long as I check off the Jesus box, then I'm good. And like I can move on to the next thing. Like there's round 2 after Jesus. And round 2 is the accumulation of stuff. And so we have this gospel that, like, you hear Paul write, you hear it in what he writes. He's like, this is the gospel. If anyone preaches another gospel, it's not that, it's not this, it's not those, it is this gospel. And the gospel that Paul preaches is that grace came to humankind in the person of Jesus and said, look, it starts right now, today. And so instead, the oppressed workers you described, using Moses, the raven, and Sugar Candy Mountain, what many people get is a gospel of sticks and carrots.
Uh-huh.
And so,
Good, yeah.
They hold the carrot at the end of a stick and they dangle it in front of them, and just a few more steps, just need a little more out of you. You're almost there, but they're not getting any closer to the carrot.
Yeah, I've almost seen it almost like when we talked about those that believe in the American dream. Like it's sad because I work with this individual. He's an old guy, right? He's like really old. He's too old to be in a factory. And the poor man, he can barely spell cat. And, he's going around telling everybody he's going to retire. And, and it's just kind of like, I don't know if you're going to retire. Like, what, did you win the lottery or something? It's like, how are you going to retire? And this was the problem with the animals, right? Remember that the animals were duped. Mm-hmm. And they thought like, okay, if we work hard, if we break our back, if we build the windmill, if we keep the pigs happy, they're going to let us retire. And then what was it? The donkey and Boxer were going to, they were going to sit in the shade, and they were just going to, they were going to graze, and they were going to end out their years, and I've seen how ministry can function, and how churches can function, and they just keep on working, just keep, like you said, the carrot and the stick, just keep on working, just keep on, and this is why these men, a lot of these men and some of these women, it's like they can't get out of the way. They won't move out of the way and let somebody else come along and let somebody else come up and take the baton, because they think that they've got to keep on working, and that the moment they stop working, heaven can't be their home.
Yep, and that's the stick. Okay. That's exactly the stick. So if you don't chase the carrot, I'm going to hit you with a stick. So chase the carrot.
Yeah.
Now you're going to get to the carrot one day in the sweet by and by. You keep begging God for what he said he would do, and one day he's going to do it. He already said he would do it. Our problem in Christianity and this discussion is that Christians do not understand the value of rest. Jesus said, come unto me, you are burdened and heavy laden, and I will give you rest.
Yeah, we preach that to the unhoused. We preach that to people who don't know Christ. We preach that as the great invitation, but contextually, in the context, in the setting, in the frame, it was like, you can't keep the law of Moses. You can't keep all of the fence laws that the Pharisees had added on.
That's right.
Simply believe in me, and all will be fulfilled. But that's too easy, and that's too much for us, because as you said Sunday, we don't want to give up the control. Control can kill you. It'll ruin your family. It'll ruin your ministry. It'll ruin relationships with your children. Control is even more dangerous than fentanyl and alcohol.
Absolutely. Because it puts you in the position where you're the co-redeemer, right?
Yeah,
now,
you're God.
Fundamentalist evangelicals are going to ridicule those liturgical groups that view Mary as the co-redeemer, right?
Yes.
One particular liturgical group.
Mary is a mystery.
Mary is certainly.
I don't pray. But I know what you're saying. But because I attend mass occasionally, and that really bothers Church of God people, and I don't really care because I'm looking for something. I'm looking
you're
for something
ecumenical.
in the Eucharist.
Yeah.
And to me, like Mary is a mystery. It's and for too long, because of our old-fashioned misogynistic ways, we just want to just do away with Mary totally.
We want to silence women. That's
not right either.
No. But this
Sorry to get off point.
No, you're okay. It's right on point, because the co-redeemer idea that we ridicule, in part because Mary and in part because of other things, but that control, like as long as I'm working, then I am going to be more on fire than you. And if I'm more on fire than you, God's going to love me more. Like the t-shirt that people buy. God loves everybody, but I'm his favorite.
Yeah, it's heretical. It's not right. Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And because you have in the Bible, let each one of you consider one another's needs as greater than your own.
Yeah. And to love is to will the good of the other. That's basic Catholic teaching, right? To will is to
that is universal benevolence as derived from biblical theological.
To will the good.
It is like universal benevolence. God made the world for it to be beautiful. It is not beautiful. God sent his son to make the world beautiful. And we keep it from being beautiful.
And then we can't have this idea that heaven is like a piece of science fiction and this old world is just a garbage can. This old world is just, like Charles Manson, garbage dump, sum it up in one big lump. No, that's not biblical thinking.
There's a worship song.
But why? Yeah, but it was a good song actually. But why in the world, do we have that duality that almost hyper Puritan, like this world is bad, this world is terrible, and we're going to escape, and we're going to go to heaven, and this old world is going to burn, and this old world is just going to rot. And like that's not scriptural, because God said he created the world and it is good. The new heaven and the new earth, the union, they're going to come together, right? There's going to be an intersection. They're going to join. They're going to that's what some of the union of marriage is supposed to be a picture of. It's supposed to be a symbol of that. But yet many evangelicals think that this whole world is just a garbage can, and I can't wait till the rapture of the church, because then I can escape judgment, I can escape persecution, and I can escape having to think about anything or anyone else but myself, and I will be taken up just like that, and I'll be sitting next to Kirk Cameron and Shambach and Hal Lindsey, and I'll be sitting there with them, and boy, and we'll have escaped this whole terrible tragedy. That's not Christianity at all.
Would it? I mean, it wouldn't surprise you, but like to our
Shambach
audience,
dead? I don't even know. I hope not.
But to our audience, right? Like there is a group called the Essenes that are
the Essenes,
discussed in the Bible, right? And they
were the Hermitage.
Yep, they sought to separate themselves from everything that was in the world. God good, world bad. And so the reason that we often see heaven as a faraway place is because heaven cannot be here, because God good, world bad. That made its way into the teaching of the ascetics in Paul's time. When Paul writes, he's like, don't think that like this new moon worship or asceticism or this, that, or the other, that any of that saves you. Like none of it gets you to the place that you're supposed to be. Those are all actions that you are doing. It's you seeking to be the reason that you are made holy. And so that like everything old is new again. And like these are heretical positions that have been heretical positions for millennia.
Yeah.
We just dress them up, right? We dress them up in like
because they're a perennial error. They're nuanced. They're just they're just changed slightly.
Deception.
Yeah. Now let's reflect on this statement, right? Let us reflect and build upon this statement. It seems like Christians are more in love with being. It seems like Christians are more in love with a physical destination.
Yep.
Than they actually are with being for Christ for eternity?
Yes.
Are we in love with the place?
Yes.
Why?
Couple reasons. So we keep thinking of heaven as something that is geographically distant from where we are now. That's one thing.
It's almost a Greco-Roman
It's-
idea of heaven,
sure,
right?
it's- It's the barrier that, it's Mount Olympus, right?
Yeah.
Like heaven is over there. Bayat, right? It can't get to it, right? There's these clouds, you can't see it. The edge of the world is flat. On the other, you fall off the edge of the world, you end up in the abyss. You stay here and you go to Mount Olympus. The journey from here to Mount Olympus is across the sea of I don't know, and so that's how I get there. So we fail to recognize a couple really important things in theology, and it's why we end up obsessed with the geographical destination. Misunderstand time, for one. So Augustine, Aristotle, lots of people have made these statements about time. Basically, time is a measurement of change or things that move from one place to another. Now, when God formed the world and all the things in it, he formed it from nothingness. Time does not exist when it is formless and void. So time exists as a way to calculate the change or the movement of things, the objects in motion, as Aristotle would have put it. And so heaven itself, then, in our minds, because we misunderstand time, heaven has to be a distant place. It has to be not here. However, wherever it is, it doesn't matter what, it's not here.
Yeah.
But you go back to the beginning and you have this creation outline in Genesis 1 and 2. And it says in this that he cast them out of the garden that was in the midst of Eden. God planted a garden in the midst of Eden, and there he formed man. So our root, where we came from, our uncorrupted, intentional place to be, what Paul writes about when he says our citizenship is in heaven, and from it there we await a Savior. We are blessed with every spiritual blessing in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus. His statements transcend time.
Yeah, time.
And so if we can understand that time is a construct for us to understand things in the physical world, then heaven becomes less distant, and we realize that we're still in Eden.
Yeah.
We haven't left. Now, we may not be in the garden, but we keep looking for Mount Ararat in Turkey. We keep looking to find Noah's Ark, right? Because that's going to prove something,
Yeah.
right?
So
But
we can worship it.
Right, that's exactly what
Yeah.
happened. But we can't find heaven here because we insist on making life hell for others. And it is because we think that we have to get to the lots of time. We think that eternity with God is lots of time, when eternity with God is recognizing this is not where I'm from.
Yeah, because ticking away the moments that take up a dull day, right?
That's right.
Ticking away the moments that take up a dull day. Yeah. So there's polar opposites as it concerns heaven. Heaven is either a perfect, flawless utopia. Heaven is simply too good to be true.
Yep.
Heaven without Jesus, or he plays a very minor role in paradise. This is one I think, sadly, tragically, many are stuck in, which they will not admit it. Even ourselves at times. Heaven is a glorious country club where there will be no less desirables. Heaven is a glorious country club where there will be no minorities. There will be no child molesters. There will be no liars. There will be no thieves. And there will be no murderers.
Boy, people are going to be real disappointed.
Yeah, and I think people are going to struggle with that. We struggle with the love and the grace of God. Sometimes I wonder if people even want it to be what it says in Romans. Romans 8, at the end of Romans 8, what can separate us?
What can separate? Nothing.
us? But many times people, I think they want it to be separated. I think they want it to be complicated. They want judgment. They want wrath. They want vengeance, and they don't want people who have done horrible things, a black heart, however you want to phrase it. They're not going to be there, and we will rejoice because they're not going to be there. And I think that's very problematic.
Oh, yeah. There's a couple things there. One of them is that it really does challenge the idea of who needed the cross to bring about redemption. Was there no other way? God couldn't do it any other way? Or does it satisfy humankind's bloodlust to see the other punished? And it's like the only way it makes sense to us is if we see that brutality of death. And so much of our theology then is steeped in death, and it's less in the resurrection.
Yeah.
It's less in the new life. It's less in, okay, well, what if I'm saved from something, what am I saved to?
Yeah.
And we miss that. The second thing that it illustrates is that the desire for the undesirables to not be there, for the other to not be there, points to exceptionalism, that I am superior to you. Humility before God is recognizing that 6 feet of dirt make all of us equal.
Yeah.
If we don't breathe, we're all going to die. Nobody's special that they get this secret stash of oxygen inside their ear. If you don't breathe, you're going to die.
No.
If you are not able to breathe underwater, you are going to drown. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you own. Mike Lynch, right? The tech guy in Europe. He died when that ship drowned off the coast of Greece.
Yeah.
And then the third thing is that this idea of exceptionalism gives us permission to be a doorkeeper. And so we read in Psalms.
It's like being a doorkeeper when you used to smoke crack. Like you're not getting in because you don't have any money.
Yeah.
You're not getting in because you don't have anything to offer. You're not coming in here. Oh, you don't have anything? Then you can't come in here. Oh, you have $100? I'll gladly open the door. But the minute that $100 runs out, get your butt out of here. And if you don't, I remember those doormen, and boy, it was difficult.
Yeah, I'd rather be a doorkeeper in the house of the Lord than dwell in the tents of the wicked. We sing a song about that, right?
Yeah.
There's like a super popular song about that has that repeated as the chorus. And Jesus is like, okay, I've invited you to live in my presence. Can you just come inside and stop telling people they're not good enough? Like, who made you in charge of keeping them away from me? And so these things come together. We're obsessed with the brutality. The brutality gives us a sense of entitlement because we picked the right answer, right? Oh, well, Jesus, I got the right answer. Now I've got access into heaven. But it puts us in a position where we end up becoming the barrier to people coming to Christ. Right. We are the reason people don't get there. In the midst of, well, I'm trying to reach the world for you, Lord, but all of you get away from me. None of you are good enough. Go somewhere else.
Well, that's why, like the other night at Bible study, when they were talking about, is it you brought up the concept of t-shirt Christianity, ball cap Christianity, keychain Christianity, bumper sticker Christianity. And I told the group, and the older ones are the ones that really struggle with it. I said, what, if you're going to wear a Jesus shirt and a Jesus hat, I said, you better act right. Yep. Because if you don't, you'd be better off if you didn't even have any of those things on to begin with. Because if you're going to be cold and if you're going to be mean and if you're going to be rotten, then take the Jesus shirt off. It's the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you. Yep. And it was the old stalwarts. They really cranked up about that, and they really didn't like that. But the reason I said that is because I have been that person wearing the Jesus hat, wearing the Jesus shirt,
the
what
necklace,
would Jesus,
the bracelet.
and I've been on the sidewalks throwing a fit, throwing a bicycle, body slamming the bicycle on the pavement, and people are looking at you and they're like, wow, you're wearing a Jesus hat? It'd have been better off if I didn't have any of those things on, because you can't let your t-shirt define your belief system or your ideology.
Yeah. One of the best experiences I've had, and I've had it several times, dealing with unhoused, unsheltered folks in places that I've worked downtown, making a connection with someone, getting their name, and spending time. In one case, it was like a year and a half before this person looked at me and said, "You're a Christian, aren't you?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, yeah." And they nodded their head and said, "You're a pastor, aren't you?" I said, "Yeah." But I didn't lead with, "Brother, do you know Jesus?"
Yeah, because nobody ever, people are tired of that, and people are like, it's like, we're not selling Amway, we're not selling insurance, we're not telemarketers, and like people are so fed up with that, and like, but it's our default. It's our default mode that we go into. We become these little flim flam men. Like, do you know Jesus, brother? Do you know Jesus? And like people are like, get the hell away from me. I don't want anything to do with you. It took a year for them to know you're a Christian. You tell a lot of people that and they go, well, why wouldn't you just say it sooner? Why didn't you just get it out there? Why didn't you just get the plan of salvation out as fast and as quick as you can? Because some people would even say you were probably a transgressor for waiting that long. Are you ashamed of Jesus? Are you ashamed of the gospel? No, you're not an idiot, and you're led by the Spirit, and you're taking time, because you have to, some of these pastors and some of these ministers, you have to realize, like you said, they really believe that if they were to fall and have a horrible, tragic sin, or if something was to happen to them, God forbid, God strike them dead, that their city would burn in hell. Yep. Because they're the man of faith and power. Like, they're that important.
Man of the hour.
No, you're not. Yep. You're not that important. If anything, you're probably just getting in the way, and you're barring up the access to Christ to begin with.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for that self-importance. I think that comes back to the exceptionalism. I think it comes back to the idea of, if I work harder than you do, then heaven is some sort of meritorious place.
It's going to be like a cruise ship, and like, you're going to be in steerage, but we're going to be in the captain's cabin.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So let's look at some of these now. What will we do? What will we do in this place called heaven? Some say that we will enjoy the home or paradise that God has promised us. But there's the Dostoevskian principle from Notes from Underground that I want to thresh out for a moment, because this, Dostoevsky says you give man everything that he wants. You give him where all he has to do is eat cakes, and all he has to do is focus on replenishing the earth, having offspring. You give him everything his heart could ever desire, and he will smash it all to pieces. Yep. Just to prove to you that he is a man, just to prove to you that he is not the keys of a piano. He said he'd do it out of spite. Yeah, and he said he would play some nasty trick. So like, how does this like, people think, if I go to heaven, like, I'm just not going to do anything at all. Just going to sit around on a cloud and like do absolutely nothing.
Well, it's what we pitch, right? It's
what we want.
Well, but it's what we pitch. Work really hard now, and you'll get the reward later.
Sugar Candy Mountain. Animals on Animal Farm.
Yep.
And what happens to Boxer? Boxer builds the windmill, right? Boxer gives every bit of himself, because he's a type of the proletariat, right?
Battle of the Windmill.
He's a type of Parsons in 1984, right?
Yep.
The ignorant proletariat that will question nothing, and he doesn't even know that he's going off to the knackers. He doesn't even know that the pigs have sold him to be boiled up for glue.
Yep.
Boy, how many has that happened to people in the church?
It's happened to me.
It's hellish.
Times. It's happened to me. Like I worked myself into a place where I didn't want anything to do with church more than once. Like,
I know a lot of people.
It happens.
They don't want nothing to do with it anymore.
You get to the point where you're like, take it and run with it. Go do something with it.
You'd rather be around people that don't have anything to do with that, and that's sad and it's tragic, but it happens all the time.
It's happening,
but it's not going to happen to me, brother. No, because you don't think.
Yeah,
you just want to eat. Okay, so There's the Dostoevskian principle, right? What we do in this place called heaven, believers will receive rewards based on their heart motives and service to God.
Yep.
Right? That's 1 Corinthians 2 and 11. You know, it was built on the. You know, was it built with? There's that competition again if it's taken out of context, right? Was it built on gold, silver, precious metal, or was it built on wood, hay, and stubble? And we say, oh, I know yours was built on wood, hay, and stubble. When I went to JSM, we always called it the smoking section, that there would be some in heaven and they would smell like smoke and they would be sitting in the smoking section. And the ones who had built on gold, silver, and precious metals would be a little bit higher, and these down here would smell like smoke.
Exceptionally.
Because the cool kids in high school versus the burnout losers.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And like that's not too far of a stretch, right? With our carnal mind, our selfish mind, our mind that does not want to will the good of the other. That's where those phrases come from, the smoking section, right? Because like that is so just even thinking about that is so revealing, because you know, if you smoke cigarettes, you're dirty. If you smoke cigarettes, you're going to go to hell.
Yeah, Charles Spurgeon, one of the greatest preachers, people would argue, smoked a cigarette before a cigar before every sermon to prepare his voice.
Yeah, and he probably got a good kick from from all the nicotine in the cigar.
I'm sure
it's a
did.
stimulant. He probably felt great for a few minutes, you know.
Yeah.
And he said he quit because he saw a billboard that says "Smoke the cigars that Spurgeon smokes."
And that's why he quit.
Yeah,
And he just set him aside.
Yeah, it was that easy. I don't know if I started. I don't know if I could just set him aside. But
I can't, man.
Okay, so what will we do in heaven? Believers will worship and serve the Lord forever. There's that concept of taking away the moments that take up a dull day. Our conception of time distorts that, because some have asked the question, will heaven be like a camp meeting that will heaven be like a camp meeting that will literally never end? Some would say that such a thought is tormenting and vexing.
That's tormenting and vexing.
Right? We've been to those meetings, you know, where it's like, and it's one thing when the Spirit moves, but when the Spirit is stopped moving, you know, and I've been to those meetings, they drag on for 5 or 6 hours. They're like, we're going to give brother so-and-so, he's credentialed from the state of Arkansas. He's only going to take 5 minutes. It's like, no, he's not. He's going to take 15 minutes if you could even get him to shut up. And then he's got 6 more windbags behind him, and like you've already been sitting in that stinking seat for 2.5 hours. You're ready to get the hell out of there, and you know there's a whole line of dead ringers coming right behind him. But you know, heaven's not going to be like that, is it?
Well, you know, you bring up the point, like, you know, we're going to serve God. What does God need? Like, what does he need? Like, what are you going to do? Like, get his socks? I mean, like, what are you going to do? Like, trim his toenails? Like, what are you? Jesus has been doing just fine in heaven all this time without you. What do you bring to the table?
Yeah. So, you know, worship and serving the Lord, there's those moments when you're in the presence of God, and those moments, it seems like time doesn't even exist.
Well, it doesn't exist.
But then it pulls you back in, and I wish I could get back there. I wish I could have stayed there longer. Hopefully, prayerfully, it will be that, and it won't be the dry, stale camp meeting with, you know, 4 or 5 guys wearing cheap suits that just want to hear themselves talk, because that sometimes can feel like hell.
It definitely can. Makes you feel like you're in the smoking section.
Yeah, it makes you wish you were in the smoking section. Now, what will we do in a place called heaven? It says we will fellowship with others. Now, this brings up the concept of what about my friends and my loved ones who didn't make it? If that's even the right way to think about it or phrase it, right? There's going to be people that aren't there that you wish were there. One person on, I think it was Quora or Reddit, he criticized this viewpoint about, how we'll fellowship with others, and he likened it unto a spiritual lobotomy, because let's say you prayed for grandpa and grandma to get to heaven, and like they didn't get there. Like, how are you going to rejoice with them not being there? This is why I said at the beginning that I think, to understand, I don't think we can grasp it with the minds that we have, because we are corruptible, right? We are mortal, and like you said, that the clock, the Kafka, the insect clock. The clock that sounds like an insect that you can't get away from, that you're always running to beat, that you're always behind. You can never get, Alice in Wonderland, you can never get there. Like, that concept has ruined our perception.
Yeah, it makes heaven someplace else.
Yes.
Instead of here today.
And that's bad theology.
It's very bad theology.
As we close, what will be done in this place called heaven? There will be work to be done in heaven. Some say.
Sure.
Many individuals will automatically recoil when they're told that work is part of the heavenly plan. Yeah. Right?
Well, they got to plant gardens.
Yeah. But Catholic teaching has the concept of the theology of work.
Yep.
Right? The theology of work. Man was created to tend the garden.
Right.
Right? That's before the fall. Man was created to tend the garden. So why, the theology of work goes back to that point.
Yep.
But then it talks about Christ himself, the hidden years of Jesus. What was Jesus doing? Was he just sitting around? Was he just sitting around eating fried green tomatoes? Was he just sitting around with a fishing pole? Was he just sitting around daydreaming, thinking about nothing? No, he was a tekton, right? He did some kind of work with either stone or wood, that's debatable, but Jesus was a carpenter's son.
Yep.
And so he worked with his hands. He used his mind. That should give us comfort to know that Jesus was a carpenter. So therefore, possibly we will have things to do in heaven.
Probably just so we don't get bored.
Yeah. But then there's time again, right? Mm-hmm. So you have closing thoughts real quick.
Yeah, just, in general, this struggle that we have, anthropomorphism is a topic that comes up in the Bible a lot. You see that, the hand of God, the eyes of the Lord, the Lord inclines his ear, the fist of God.
Yeah.
We
his arm is not too short and his ear is not too heavy.
Yep. All these different things. And so the challenge for us in any age, at any time the discussion of heaven has taken place, has been, how close to reality today is heaven going to look? And so our struggle to rationalize anything other than the present day is one of those contributing factors. Mm-hmm. We think God looks like us, talks like us. We're supposed to look like him, right?
Yeah.
We are supposed to understand heaven from God's point of view, not keep trying to argue how it would be if I made it. Sometimes the idea of making sure I have a mansion, the mansion over the hill, is because I want to know where the fence is so that the neighbor can stay on his side. Like,
and he better not be too loud.
Yeah, we carry that with us into that heavenly realm, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, that's good. That's good, and I think that's very accurate. So we hope today that you've enjoyed this topic today, talking about heaven, and it was great to be with you. And you can you can watch these videos,
subscribe, share with your friends, tag your spouse,
and we hope that this has been a blessing to you. In some small way, and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Cisco.
On this, and we just want to wish you the best, and seek the face of God as it concerns heaven and all these other wonderful things. We're going to have some great content coming to you in 2 weeks. Can a pastor become a cult leader? It's going to be great. It's going to stir it up. and I am looking forward to it tremendously. So God bless you and good night.
Good night. Made you some Kool-Aid. Would you like some?